this podcast one time, but if you have the gumption just to walk up with
I've got
a
you,
few
man.
hundred people and just say, you know what, cut a promo for my podcast, I will assume that you have good moxie. I will assume that the Next Step Fantasy Football Podcast is a good one. I haven't heard a minute of it, but I'm assuming it's great.
Check
and I
us
can't
out.
wait to listen to it.
Check us out.
Cheers, man. Good luck out there.
Welcome to the Next Step Fantasy Football Podcast, where we help you take the next step in your fantasy journey. Here's your host.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Next Step Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Jake. I'm opening a drink, and I'm joined by my friend Jordan. Jordan, how you doing?
It's basically happy hour here at the Next Step Podcast. Next Step Fantasy Football Podcast. Excuse me, Jake.
Jordan, how are
I also
you?
have my drink.
Jordan, what are you drinking?
Water.
Is that what that is? Water.
Sure is. Got to stay hydrated, you know?
We're live on YouTube right now, youtube.com/Next Step Fantasy Football Podcast. John's in the chat, joining us from a charter fishing boat on Lake Michigan right now.
Ooh, I love the
commitment. The commitment. I love it.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for
Hope the
being
fishing's
here,
going
man.
well.
Jordan, I feel... I almost clicked the wrong button and just completely shut down the stream, so I'm glad I didn't do that. Jordan, we are finally on to bigger and better things. We're no longer doing division breakdowns. They're still relevant if you want to go check them out, so you can still go do that if you want. But we're on to other things, and I threw up on our YouTube video here the schedule for the next few weeks. Jordan, for anyone listening later on, do you want to tell people what the next month is going to look like? It's a busy month.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're a month away from football. It's crazy to think that it's
The 5th? The
you
5th?
know, summer's coming to an end. Yeah, summer's coming to an end because it's almost August, but the only saving grace is football's just around the corner.
Sure.
So this week we're talking fantasies, do's and don'ts in your draft. So just some helpful draft advice as you're getting ready. You might have already drafted or just about to draft. A lot of those redrafts are just starting. Next week we are going to talk about the players we love and the players we hate. That is the love-hate episode. Then we'll take a week off. We got a little vacations planned. Then we'll be back on the 22nd. We'll do a mailbag episode. So submit your questions. We'll put a call out for questions and stuff like that. So we'd love to answer your questions as you are going through your drafts. Just finished drafting, whatever it might be. Send your questions our way. We'll answer them on the show. And then on the 29th, we're going to do some last-second advice. You know, we're going to take into account injuries, deals, all that kind of stuff that we're talking about, matchups, last-second advice for anyone who is getting ready to draft and get started for Week 1, which starts September 5th. Ravens at Chiefs.
It's going to be a good game.
Jake is giving me... Huh?
That's going to be a good game.
It's going to be a great game. Yeah, I can't wait. Jake gave me a hard time saying that, why did you put 6:20 on the graphic? And it's because the game starts at 6:20, Jake.
Oh, the game starts. I thought... All right, well, never mind. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the start of the football season, Jake.
Wait, we're going to be...
last
Wait, we're going to have an episode during the first game?
No, I'm calling that is saying that football starts that day. Jake doesn't like the
I see.
graphic department. That intern's about to get...
Super
You get a lot of
confusing.
looks.
I wouldn't watch.
You want to watch the game?
No,
Great
I'm
game.
kidding. Of course I'd watch the game. Jamie's in the chat. Glad to have you here, man. Yeah, we got a lot of fun stuff coming up. We're going to also be breaking down the June and July leagues, so we're going to have double episode weeks coming up. And then there's one other thing that I haven't talked to Jordan about that we're going to do, so...
Ooh, I can't wait. I'll be just surprised like everyone else.
Yes, it'll be fun. We'll see. So why don't we get into it? What is a do and a don't? So, let me turn this graphic off. Go ahead, Jordan.
Would you be interested in the news first, Jake?
Oh,
or do you
I'm so sorry. There actually is a lot of news today.
There's a lot we got to talk about.
Let's hear it.
So, a couple of fun deals that just got signed. So, I think last time we were on, we talked about Trevor Lawrence's deal. Jordan Love signs a 4-year extension. So, with the Packers, $220 million. So, ties kind of the annual money with Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow, who have $55 million. Some of the more historic things on the Jordan Love deal are the signing bonus and guarantees on that. So the signing bonus, $75 million signing bonus. I think it's the biggest one ever. And then it's 155 guarantees, which is, whatever, guaranteed money. Good for him. Jake, what are your thoughts on that?
It had to happen. It had to happen. So it's not surprising. You got to pay your quarterbacks now. I hate it, but it is what it is.
You hate it? I love it.
Well, I hate having to pay someone that much.
Cap's gonna go up. Dak's gonna make 60. Who cares? We'll forget that he even was in this conversation by this time next year.
Probably.
Other quarterbacks who signed extensions. Tua signs a 4-year extension for $212, so a little bit less, but barely less to stay with the Dolphins. Jake, thoughts on Tua signing a mega?
I like Tua. I think it's the same situation. You got to pay him. Well, what's your alternative? Skylar Thompson? So, you got to pay him.
Jordan Love at 220 or Tua at 212?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd rather have Jordan Love, so I'd rather pay the extra.
Yeah, easy. For $8 million over 4 years?
Yeah.
Come on.
But I don't think it's as far away.
Other guys who signed extensions that we love are DJ Moore, signed a $110 million extension.
Good for him.
Stay with the Bears.
DJ Moore is that guy that everyone can cheer for. It doesn't matter. We like DJ Moore.
Yep. And him with Caleb, kind of locking him in for deals together, the duration of his rookie deal there. On the contract front, CeeDee Lamb still holding out for a new deal, has not shown up to report yet for camp practice. So something to keep an eye on. It's just more interesting. Not really fantasy relevant, more interesting than anything. Couple of fantasy things that popped up. Justin Herbert, injured foot. They say he should be ready by week 1, but he's in a boot. I think that means a slower start for him, right? I think he could use the practice. New system, new coach, things like that. I think that's the ding here but even if he is ready week 1.
I would expect him to be ready. Doesn't sound like it's super serious, but it's still not exactly what you want to hear, right? I have incredible luck at drafting or trading our dynasty leagues of getting a guy and then them immediately getting hurt in the preseason. Last year it was Cooper Kupp. It was JT and Cooper Kupp, and then this year it's this already. It's incredible. I'm really happy that this happens to me.
Yeah, Jake kind of has the kiss of
death. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of other sad news of injuries, DeAndre Hopkins injured in practice, out 4 to 6 weeks. So something to keep an eye on as well. Definitely tanks his draft stock, but also makes me like him in late rounds, which we'll get to a little bit later in some do's and don'ts here.
I do. Yep. All right, great.
All right, now you can say what the do and a don't is. Jake.
All right, what's a do? A do is something you should do. What's a don't? A don't is something don't do that. For example, this isn't one of our things because this isn't help for anyone. Don't take Justin Tucker with your first round pick. Obviously that is not something anyone's doing, but it's clear that's a don't. Do take at least one quarterback in your draft. So that's kind of the route we're going here. Obviously, we're going to be a little bit more specific, but I'm pretty sure everyone listening here can figure out what we mean by do this and don't do this. And I know for a fact Jordan and I probably will not agree on a few of these, so we'll be able to kind of explain why. We'll discuss, yes. All right, why don't you start us off then?
Okay, here's one that I think we agree on, Jake, so we'll start here.
Okay.
You should wait on tight end. Yep. Wait on your tight end. Double-digit rounds, take your tight end.
Yeah, I mean...
The reason why.
Go ahead, yeah.
I got some data.
Yes, please.
The difference between the top tight end last year, Sam Laporta, and tight end 5 was about 35 points. Total, over the course of the whole year. The difference between tight end 5 and tight end 10 was another 30 points. And so we're really looking at a low-end tight end 1 to a mid-tier tight end 2. Also 30 points. So when we're talking about the scale or the difference between your top flight tight ends and your mid-tier second tight ends, you're really talking 50, 60 points total.
Mm-hmm.
And the rounds we're talking about is dramatic. Sam Laporta's ADP right now is round 3. You get Dalton Schultz, tight end 14, going in round 12. I want him every time more than I want Sam Laporta in the 3rd round. And so that's my weight on tight ends.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, you can get some really good value. Unless you're absolutely in love with someone high up there. Or maybe they fall because they're just tight ends. I Jamie in the chat says Pat Fryermuth in the 10th. Like, that's fantastic. That's what you want. Unless you're going into your draft being like, okay, I really want an elite tight end, which is fine. I just don't think it's as applicable this year. So, like, going into last year, it was Travis Kelce, and then it was everyone else by a mile. And people were taking him, if you remember, he had a first-round ADP last year because people wanted that advantage, and it didn't work out. And now this year, obviously Travis Kelce has went down, but those third-round ADPs, those fourth-round ADPs of tight ends, McBride, Kelce, I'm blanking on who number 2 is right now in ADP. Maybe Mark Andrews. Yeah.
Yep.
They're clumped together there, and that's not really what you want to see because you're not getting this perceived huge advantage that you would have thought you were getting last year. Jamie also mentions, Evan Ingram falls to the 7th. You could take him, right? So I'm going to start looking at tight ends in the 7th round, 8th round, 9th round, somewhere in there. I don't know, and unless someone has fallen or maybe the board is just not going well, right? I'm probably still going to wait, but examples of the big names, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, if they're falling 3 rounds past their ADP, that's different, right? I mean, then you can really start thinking about it. So if Sam Laporta, who has a 3rd round ADP right now, right?
Yep.
And if he falls to the 6th, are you considering it there?
Oh yeah, then we're talking.
Okay,
we're saying if you're falling way out, and then we'll get to some of these. One of them is talking about value, in some of these. But yeah, it's hard to pass up a value pick like that when someone falls.
Yeah, so I think that's the only way I'm going to take a tight end in these early or these single digit rounds. I'm excluding round 9, so like rounds 1 through 7 is if they fall. My mom is in the chat. She says, Uncle Ron says hi, by the way. Hello, Uncle Ron. So, all right, cool.
Stop by, Lori.
Oh, yeah. And then my mom. So, hi, Mom. Everybody say hi to my mother. So why don't we keep her moving then? Do you mind if I do one?
Yeah.
And this is one that I was going to cover, but then Joey also mentioned it either, and I like how he said it. Do be fluid. So the only time you can go into your draft knowing exactly what you're going to do in your first round is if you have the very first pick. That's the only time you can do it. And then after that, it kind of goes a little haywire, right? You can't assume that you're just going to go running back receiver because you just never know what it's going to look like, right? If someone's following the value, you just have to be willing to kind of play by ear, right? You got to know what you're doing. Jordan, I need you to take over for a second. I'm bleeding. One moment, everybody.
Take care of yourself. I have a kind of a secondary thought to that. One of mine was about taking best player available, and I was kind of saying, don't just take best player available. Don't just do like the auto draft, right? You're looking at those, Yahoo or Sleeper or whatever, and they kind of have it where it's ranking out or it's tiering out all of the next best ones, or it's teeing them all up. And so my advice is don't just take that as gospel and say, yep, this is the next best one. So very similar to that, being fluid. After the first few rounds, those first few rounds, we kind of all have this consensus where we say like, hey, these guys are kind of those top tier. The next ones are sort of that tier. But once you got guys on your team, once there's people in the roster spots, your math changes. Once players start dropping, the value of them changes. And so you need to be able to be fluid, understand your ADPs, make sure you're doing a little research beforehand, and start drafting based on your needs, start drafting based on the value of people and picks that are there. And so, being fluid, being ready to kind of roll, and that's what makes people good at drafting. Having that skill is being fluid.
For sure. Sorry, I just got a little distracted there.
Clearly, yeah.
I think it's important, like you mentioned. I actually have no idea what happened to me. That was just the troubling part. I think what's important there is, once you kind of are starting to fill out your roster, right, that you know your ADPs. You know that this guy typically should be going in the 5th, so that might be a guy, it's the 6th round, and you might want to look at him there. And if you already have your 3 receivers and you're like, man, I went receiver, I feel good. And then the 4th round rolls around and you have, for some reason, DJ Moore sitting there. You might consider going at your receiver again to fill that flex or whatever it is. So it's really just, like you said, just being fluid. And I think that's a good word for kind of what we're talking about here.
Jamie in the chat says, don't get caught up in position runs. What are your thoughts on that? When, like all of a sudden, let's say you're sitting there in like the 2nd round and all of a sudden all of these running backs just are getting taken. Like 4 or 5 running backs get taken and then it's your turn.
Well, then I think I do not panic. There's always value, right?
Do not is don't, right?
Oh, that's right. That's hilarious. Do your mock drafts, right? If all the running backs start going in this 2nd round, you might need to just wait, and you need to be okay with that. And you need to know who you're going to go after later on, right? Earlier rounds, I think it matters more. If for some reason running backs start going in the 1st round, and your Tyreek Hills and your Amon-Ra St. Brown start getting pushed, don't just take a running back. Don't take Kieran Williams in the 1st round because other running backs are going. Right? Take the receiver that should have went earlier, or let other people make the mistakes, right?
Yeah, let other people make the mistakes is, I think, a key draft strategy.
Yes.
Right? And so, we're seeing in the draft in the chat here, and Jake, you mentioned it too, doing your mock drafts. Like, take time, do a little prep, do some mock drafts, see how the board falls, so that you're just ready. Because sometimes you're doing these drafts and you're like 2 minutes to pick, right?
Yeah.
And you're like three picks before you're sitting and you're like, I know who I'm gonna take. And then all of a sudden there's maybe a run on a different position, or there's a run on the position that you're thinking about, or maybe your player gets taken, and you just want to make sure you're prepared. And doing mock drafts is the best way to do that.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and do the next one?
All right. I have one here that I think you'll agree with, and then the rest of mine you might not. So I'm excited. So do use your late round picks to take big swings, take rookies that could be impact, not the safe one. We're looking for high ceiling, potentially low floor, not high floors in those picks. So guys like Marshawn Lloyd, rookie running back for the Packers. I like him in the 15th better than I like Brandon Cooks or Josh Downs in the 15th. Right? I'm looking for these guys that I'm like, hey, they could make an impact or they could be a bust, and that's fine.
Yeah.
The other ones that I like here in these late rounds are kind of tried and true players that might be injured. So DeAndre Hopkins is another one that obviously he's injured now, but his draft stock's going to fall. And I don't if he falls into late rounds, I like taking someone like DeAndre Hopkins, who I can just have him sit on my bench and could provide an impact for me later in the season. And potentially, outsize, he could be given wide receiver 3 numbers kind of towards the end of the season when he's back. And so those are the things that I think are best for those late round picks, are big swings rather than high floor guys.
You're trying to you're taking your high floor guys earlier on, hopefully. You want the guy that's going to win you your league later, right? The guy, you take Marshawn Lloyd in the 5th, and sure, maybe over the first 8 weeks and it doesn't work out and you have to cut him, so be it. Whatever, who cares, right? But, or Josh Jacobs goes down week 1 and all of a sudden you got a running back 2 the rest of the year. So, take your flyers.
Yeah.
I don't really have much to say with that. I agree with you on that.
Great.
I think that's a pretty good one.
Saving my controversial ones.
Yeah. I got one. Joey says in the chat, don't give up on your league just because the draft didn't go well. I think that's very applicable in free leagues if people do that. Don't just give up. Maybe it just didn't go well. Work at it. There are people want to trade. People want to make moves. There's always someone in your league that's trade happy. That's me and ours. And you can always just make a deal. Just don't give up, right? Also, I just want to advocate that you don't give up in a league, because no one likes fantasy football with people who play teams that don't set their rosters every week. As a community, we need to just be like, that's not okay. Don't do that.
Be better.
Be better.
Be better.
So, I know we do some free leagues in our thing, and no, you got to set your lineup. Set your lineup. Do set your lineup.
Do set your lineup. Great advice. All right, Jake, do you have any other ones? Otherwise, I can rapid fire some of mine.
I think you're about to cover a few of them because we talked about it.
Okay. let's do one. I know we sit on opposite sides of the fence on here, Jake. All right. I'm saying don't wait until the last rounds to take your kicker or your defense. Don't do it. The difference between kicker 1 and kicker 10, kicker 1 and kicker 10 last year was almost 40 points. And I know I talked about that earlier with the tight end position. I was like, oh, it's only 40 points. But we're talking a 1 round difference. 1 round difference, potentially 40 points. I love it. That could be significant. And what's the other player? Your wide receiver 7? That's who you're taking there? Like, who cares? Everyone's taking big swings anyway. To go 1 round earlier, get the guy above everyone. Take
Who's the guy?
Tucker before everyone else.
You're saying take Justin Tucker a round earlier.
You just get your first pick then. You get the first pick of the litter. Take Dallas's guy. He scored a bunch last year. That's a high-scoring offense. You just get your pick at that point. The one that I'm really want to drive home, though, this time, and I'm curious your thoughts. So kicker is one thing, and we obviously joke about that, and you and I sit on opposite sides there. I think defenses this year, the defense special teams, is going to be much more interesting, and you don't want to wait on that one. Because special teams could be interesting. With the new kickoff rules, we could get some weird Josh Cribbs stuff, like back in the good old Joshua Cribbs days, where he was just scoring like huge points because he could return stuff really well. So I'm looking at this position group, if you will, as being just a little bit different this year as far as the defense goes. So I'm not going to wait until the last round. I know Jake sits until the absolute last round of the last pick to pick that defense. I don't think you're finding impact wide receivers, running backs, tight ends in that space. But I think you can make a difference potentially with your defense.
All right, so I'll go the opposite way, and I will say I keep saying don't take your kicker or your defense early. I am a fan of.
I didn't say early. I said not the last round.
No, it is.
Don't do it.
If you're not going to take Justin Tucker, if that's not what you're doing, then don't take it around earlier. We're talking the last 2 rounds, so I don't think it really matters. But I'm a person that says do stream your kickers and defenses. When we play, I have a different kicker every week. I'm playing whatever the matchup is. Defense, I am playing whatever the matchup is. There's always going to be that team that's really bad.
When was the last time that you won?
Okay, why are you doing that? In our league?
I'm just saying.
It's been a few years.
I'm just saying.
In our league, it's been a few years.
I'm just saying, Jake.
Last year, I won 6 out of 10, so I feel okay about it.
That's pretty good.
In fairness, it might be 6 out of 11. But regardless.
Well, that's not as good anymore.
You stream your kickers and defenses. I will agree with you that defenses, because they have special teams, might have more of an impact this year.
Yeah.
I do want to throw this out. If you're drafting here in the next, let's say 2 weeks, okay? Honestly, if you're drafting anywhere in the month of August, I feel this way. And this is because you can still draft the first 5 days before the Ravens-Chiefs game, right? If you're drafting anytime in August, I'm not taking a kicker or a defense at all. I would say don't draft either of them. Have 2 extra guys on your roster, and then maybe something hits, maybe it doesn't. More likely it won't, right? But if you take a random player, Drake May's going undrafted right now. Take Drake May. Who knows? He might light up preseason, and you want to keep him on your roster. And then you can just cut someone else. Take 2 guys that may not turn anything. More than likely, they probably won't, right? And then right before week 1, you just cut them, pick up your kicker and defense. I'd rather have the most players on my roster until week 1 starts. So, what do you think of that?
That is more interesting.
What is the point of having a kicker and defense during the month of August before the season starts?
Well, we kind of have a sense of who the good kickers and defenses are going to be. So I think you could tier some of that out. But if you are in a league that just lets you take random people, like you don't need to draft your full roster, you just fill it out with the players. I don't hate that strategy.
No, not at all. Joey says, do draft your defense based on the first few games matchups, which is fine. I think I agree with you there. But I'm not going to take them earlier than they should. If it's the last round and I've decided I'm going to take my defense here, which is what 90% of people will probably do, sure, look at who they're playing. Most people just look at who they're playing week 1. Take 3 seconds and look who they're taking who they're playing weeks 1, 2, and 3. Because getting out to an early lead in your fantasy season is important if you can.
Yep.
All right. You got another one?
I do have another one. This year, I'm going to say don't use the 0 RB strategy when you're drafting. So for those who are not familiar, the 0 RB strategy is waiting until much, much later to take a running back. So you're stocking up on your
what is much, much later in your eyes?
What I wrote down is I'm saying you should target a running back within the first 4 rounds this year. Because reliability and that bell cow back is so limited this year in the NFL. There are just not very many of them. And if you wait until the 5th round, you're looking at guys like Aaron Jones and James Conner. And to me, I'm just not waiting on someone like that. So I'm taking at least one. You could be at 3 wide receivers and a running back. That's fine. But I don't want to miss out on these top shelf running backs who are bell cows, like true bell cows, minimal injury history, or have proven that they can be top tier quarterbacks. So yeah, I'm seeing Jamie calling it a hero running back strategy, or he's saying
I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to disagree with you on that.
You're going 0 RB?
Yeah, if you could send me the link for the ADPs that we're using, but I like the idea of receiver, consider tight end. Sorry about that, everyone. Kind of just showed everyone what we were doing. And then looking at running backs, their ADPs here. Sorry, behind the curtain here, guys. Yeah, I like the idea of taking running back or receivers and maybe a tight end, maybe a quarterback, right? And you can get Ramondre Stevenson, who's only got like Antonio Gibson behind him. I like him. I've talked about how much I like Najee, like DeAndre Swift. Like there's some decent value here. Tony Pollard in the 8th round. I mean, you could get a bunch of these guys.
Yeah, but none of these guys are like running the show.
But that's the but that's the point. Like you're not asking them.
I need someone that I'm like I know is a 3-down back, and those guys done after round 4 by ADPs.
Okay, I hear you. I get it. But I'm kind of all. I'm gonna just fully disagree.
You're like David Montgomery, my number 1 guy, number 1 running back, RB1.
You don't have to have a bell cow on your team. Yeah, if I went Amon-Ra the first, turned around and got I'm looking at it like Drake London and Chris Olave, right? Turned around again and then went and got Cooper Kupp, and then took my quarterback and got Lamar. And then I have to rock Najee and Ramondre Stevenson. I'm okay with that.
You're okay with that? You're happy with those 2 guys?
Well, I'm not ecstatic.
Well, you can't have both. No, just for the record, you can't have both those guys. They're in the same round, ADP. You could have Ramondre, and then you could have like Nick Chubb or Jalen Warren, or you could take Najee and Tony Pollard. But you can't have both of them. Those are all 6th round ADPs, 7th round ADPs.
Okay, but I hear what you're saying. I get it. I just don't think it's as crazy as you are acting like it is. Like I think there's.
I'm not. I think it's a strategy. People use it all the time. People use that strategy all the time. I'm saying this year, not for me.
I think there's really good value.
I'd advocate for it. It's just not this year.
I think there's really good value in that 6th, 7th, 8th round. You know, your Ramondre in the 5th, your DeAndre Swift, Najee in the 6th, your Tony Pollard, Devin Singletary in the 8th. Keep going. You got Javonte Williams in the 9th, Brian Robinson. You could stack a lot of those guys.
But you'd be happy with filling up 6 roster spots with like mid guys. No, I hear what you're saying. The value is great.
Yeah, because
I don't hate those ADPs for them.
Yes, because I hate
that they're the ones that I am saying are top on my. That's RB1s, and I'm riding them to the playoffs.
I'm okay doing that, and then having better receivers than pretty much everyone in the league. Having an elite quarterback that's probably better than almost everyone in the league. You might consider even a tight end if you're waiting in that situation better than everyone in the league, and then you have a bottom tier running back crew. I mean, that can take you to a championship.
Correct, but you're saying I have better wide receivers than everyone in the league. But like I'm just saying, instead of Cooper Kupp, take Josh Jacobs, take Joe Mixon,
take ETN.
Take ETN. ETN's a little higher than.
Oh, okay.
That would be like not taking.
That ADP's went up. since we last talked about it.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, I'm not advocating. Like, I'm saying just make sure you get one guy. Do your hero RB, get a bell cow, because they run out, they dry out, and then it's just throwing darts. And I'm happy with that, and the value is great later. And I love that with, like, running backs 2 through 8 or 2 through 5 on my team. I'm all about it. But
so you'd rather...
Anyway, we can disagree on it.
Would you rather... So you'd rather go receiver in the first round, let's say, and then Derrick Henry, and then would you be fine going receiver, quarterback, receiver, running back, receiver, and then ending up with 2 of those other guys we just talked about?
Correct. Yeah,
Gotcha.
but I got someone on my team that I trust and I'm ready to start every single week. Otherwise, you're just going to try and play matchups. You're worried about
Which
the
is
coaches.
fine, though.
You're worried about how much time. You're worried about the guy behind him. And again, all that's fine, and the value could be good, and you could, you could strike. Like, you could get someone great, but not for me. Not for me, dog.
It's a no for you, dog?
Mm-hmm.
All right, how many more do you got, Jordan?
All right, I got one last one that I want to talk about.
Can I just say
I
one?
actually got 2. Once. Yeah, huh?
One that's really quick. Here, let me... I gotta find the ADP here. Do draft. We kind of just mentioned him, but do draft Travis Etienne. This ADP to me is crazy, and I understand that he's running back 8, which sounds still pretty high. Like, I don't want to sound like my Tony Pollard thing from last year, right? But guys going ahead of him.
It's the second round.
Yeah, I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
But he's. I get that he's going in the second round, but this is a quick, like, who's going around him. Like, Kieran Williams, A-Chain, Saquon. I'd rather have all of them. Or rather have him versus all of them. It's just a little tiny one. We don't have to get too big into it. But I really think Etienne's poised for a good year this year. And if you can get him in the second round, you should do it and not wait till the third. If you can get him in the third, do it. Absolutely. If you go receiver, and Etienne staring you in the face, please do it. All right, move on.
All right, I got 2 more, Jake. One's just good advice. One, I'm curious your thoughts. Just be aware. Please be aware of injury risk when you're drafting players. I'm not saying don't draft guys because of their injury risk, but you got to be aware and take it into account. When you're looking at someone like Breece Hall versus Bijan, 2 first-round guys. Breece Hall, recent injury history.
Yeah.
So again, not saying don't take Breece Hall, but just be prepared to have someone kind of in the wings just in case. Same with guys like CMC, some of these top ones. But as it goes down the list, there's quarterbacks with injury history. How are people going to bounce back? Justin Jefferson, Tank Dell. Again, take them. The value's good. They're excellent players. You know what they are at their ceiling, and it's awesome. Be aware and plan accordingly for taking guys. Don't just say, oh, yeah, Justin Jefferson, he's my guy. I don't need it. I'll wait on more receivers. That might not be the strongest strategy.
I agree. I love that. Yeah, I mean, that could kind of go into just handcuffing some guys. Like, if I'm taking the one running back that's going high, super high, if I'm taking CMC, I want his backup. I do. And just do it. Just have handcuff him and be fine with it. Sorry, I'm looking at the thing here. Hey, Jordan, is there football on tonight? Oh, no, it's Saturday. When's the Hall of Fame game? I'm just kind of
I don't know.
Yeah, sorry. I just got all
Very
excited.
distracted.
It is. There's football on right now. We missed that.
The Hall of Fame game is
Yeah,
right now?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I know what I'm doing after this.
Whoops. So sorry about that, everyone. I just saw a thing pop up on my phone that's like football's back. I'm like, what? Caleb Williams not playing tonight. FYI. Yeah, but like you were saying, I think it's important. Aaron Rodgers, as a guy I keep thinking of, I think he's going to bounce back this year. I do, but like you have to acknowledge the fact that he's, coming off an Achilles, right? Like these running backs, these receivers, these guys who had injuries, you got to maybe handcuff them or just temper expectations, right? Excuse me. If you're taking a bunch of receivers that have been hurt before a lot, well then, maybe you want to bulk up on some later on. It sounds like a duh thing to say, but you'd be surprised how many people, like, I don't want the combination of Tua and Aaron Rodgers on my fantasy team.
No way.
You know what I mean?
No way.
All right, keep it moving. Let's do the last one.
Last one here, Jake.
Yeah.
And this one I hold so dearly in my heart.
So dearly, huh?
Don't do it. Draft any wide receiver over the age of 30 and expect high-level production.
Okay.
If your name's not Jerry Rice, you're not going to do it. Let me hit you with some stats, Jake.
Davante Adams.
This one I told you last year. When?
He was good last year.
Last year, he had 1,100 yards.
That's good.
I said high-level production, Jake.
What is high level?
Everyone gets 1,100 yards. People get 1,100 yards all the time. Justin Jefferson had over 1,000 yards. He only played half the season.
Which is crazy, by the way.
Yeah. Last time, over 1,500 yards, Brandon Marshall, 2015. That's a long time ago. It's almost a decade. It feels like 2015 is close. It's not. Decade. Still not enough evidence for you, Jake? The last time a wide receiver over 30 even cracked 1,200 yards was 2016, and it was Jordy Nelson. And he barely did it. 1,257.
First of all,
it just doesn't happen.
Love Jordy.
It doesn't happen. It's hard to do. So what that means is we're looking at guys who we might treat as high-level wide receivers, and they might still have production. Again, 1,000-yard seasons, 5+ touchdowns, all those are good. But there are some guys here that people are drafting like first round and expecting like top production out of.
Like who?
Davante Adams.
Okay.
Tyreek Hill. Cooper Kupp. Mike Evans. Keenan Allen. We talked a little DeAndre Hopkins. Amari Cooper. Stephon Diggs. All these guys are over the age of 30. And if you think that any one of them could do 1,500 yards, that would be it would break precedent. And if you think two of them, we're just going to disagree.
He says
this doesn't happen. Even 1,250 yards. Even 1,250 yards. If someone did that, that would break a precedent. Like 1,250 yards has not been done by someone over 30 since 2016.
All right. What I'll say is that precedent will be broken this year.
You said that last year too.
Yeah.
And you said it was going to be Davante Adams.
So you're telling me right now Tyreek Hill's not going over 1,200 yards?
I'm saying if
no, come on,
it would break a
no.
Jake.
That's now, Jordan. I've made fun of the buckets you've made on this podcast before, but that's a good one. You might as well do it if you're going to say it.
Well, 1,500 yards I'll book, and 1,500 yards I feel like isn't even a strong.
1,500 yards is hard to do. So like,
yes, but Tyreek Hill 1,500 yards over the age of 30 would be crazy.
Okay,
but
will he go over 1,250?
You can book it. No wide receiver over the age of 30 goes for over 1,250 yards.
So what Jordan is telling you guys then is don't draft Tyreek Hill in the first round. That's what he's saying.
I am saying don't draft Tyreek Hill in the first round. Yep. Other guys like Cooper Kupp later, if Davante Adams falls to the late second, early third, Amari Cooper I like his value, Mike Evans I like his value. There's guys I really like their value. I'm just saying taking those guys and expecting you could inch towards 1,500 yards, big production, big fantasy production, it has not happened historically.
Yeah, I think we can agree that Cooper Kupp's the best value there. Because
I like Amari Cooper too.
Yes, here's the thing. I think Amari Cooper and Cooper Kupp, finish relatively close to each other. But what I'll say is if we're picking one of those guys, and I believe they're being drafted similar, right? If one of them pops off, though, if you had to pick which one's going to pop off for 1,400 yards, I would guess Cooper Kupp, right? Because we've seen him do it. So that's kind of why I'd prefer to have him. But you're right. I think that all these older receivers don't produce. I'd like Davante Adams late in the second. I love Cooper Kupp in the fourth. I love Amari Cooper, I believe, in the fifth. So I will agree. I do think Tyreek Hill though does go over 1,250. So.
Yeah, and this takes injury into account. Like, if he gets injured, that doesn't null this take.
No,
over the
it does
age
not.
of 30, the injury risk is so much higher, right?
Yep.
Like, it's so much higher. That's part of this. It's why these receivers don't, produce at this level. I think Davante Adams is still excellent receiver, and from a football perspective, he's awesome. But from a fantasy perspective, unless he's catching a lot of touchdowns, he's the days of 1,300-yard seasons might be behind him. I think they are.
All right, there you go. That's a good one. All right, guys.
That's a strong take.
That's a strong take.
I feel strongly about it. That's data back. That's data-driven.
Data back.
I'm not. That's not even my. I don't even think that. That's just what the math says, Jake.
It's the math. All right, guys. So there's your do's and don'ts for the 2024 draft season. I should have saved the ETN thing for next week because we're going to talk about players we love and players we hate. Our love-hate episode. And I'm looking forward to that because I hopefully will redeem myself from last year because I've had some bad ones here in the past. So I'm hoping to rebound from the Tony Pollard who broke everyone's heart. May I just say
everyone's?
Oh, come on, he broke everybody's heart. And then the
Marlon, the leagues I'm in with you, you took him instead of me.
Yeah, I know. And the Marlon Mack thing from the year before. So we'll see who I put the kiss of death on this year. Like you mentioned, you can find us on Facebook, Next Step Fantasy Football Podcast. You can be here live with us, typically Thursdays, on YouTube at youtube.com/Next Step Fantasy Football Podcast. That day will change coming up for the fantasy season because, as anyone who has been around for a while, we'd like to talk about the upcoming week every week. So keep an eye out for that, and we'll be changing that. And yeah, so that was fun. I'm glad we could talk about something a little different than the breakdowns.
I like it.
Breakdowns are fun.
Breakdowns, but I agree.
Yes. Jordan, unless you have anything else you want to say.
Don't take a wide receiver over the age of 30 in the first round.
And I will say, please, for the love of God, stream your kickers and defenses, people. All right. Take care. Be good, guys.
Listening to the Next Step Fantasy Football Podcast. Follow and subscribe on Facebook and YouTube at the Next Step Fantasy Football Podcast.